I've always been a traveler since I was very young. In high school, first trip I took without the family was to study in Spain for a summer for 6 weeks. Next summer, I was a volunteer in Peru. The next summer, I volunteered in Venezuela. And the next summer, I studied in Mexico City.
Hello, Ralph. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mark.
Welcome to Peak Performance Perspective, where we help entrepreneurs master health, wealth, and relationships. Now, as a full time travel photographer and an international tour organizer, what does peak performance mean to you?
Means doing your best at all times and trying to, for me, it's a lot about setting expectations. It's something I learned very early on in my tour organizing career was setting expectations. And I think that's something that people can use throughout their lives. But peak performance to me is really striving to always be your best, put out your best, and to give your best.
When you say setting expectations, what does that mean?
For trips like mine, for what I do, which is organizing and leading small group trips around the world, it's setting expectations for what people can look forward to in the place. Some of the places we go to are maybe third world or aren't maybe run down and a little bit different, maybe a lot different than the people that are coming on the trips are used to. Letting people know what to expect in the location so that they're not either blown away, either good or bad, hopefully good, but you don't want them to expect, I don't know, 5-star luxury and perhaps you're doing 3-star or whatever. I just learned early on. One thing is that I used to organize more photo workshops, which are much more hardcore photography workshops. I found out early on that some of the people that were coming onto the trips were expecting those kinds of hardcore workshop trips. And after a while, I realized I wasn't able to provide that 10 or 12 times a year. I do because I'm doing 10 or 12 trips a year. And those can be very tiring, and every sunrise, sunset, and imagery views and photo walks. And it can be very difficult to do that one trip a year, let alone 10 or 12 as the leader. So that's something I learned. So I didn't want people to come onto my hybrid photo tour and expect a photo workshop because they're only going to be disappointed. So it's all about not disappointing clients.
Yeah. What inspired you to start organizing tours in the first place?
I've always been a traveler since I was very young. In high school, first trip I took without the family was to study in Spain for a summer for 6 weeks on my own with my high school. So I went with a group of students and teachers from my high school. And that was an absolutely incredible experience at 15 years old. I fell in love with Europe and Spain specifically right then and there on that trip. Next summer, I was a volunteer in Peru. The next summer, I volunteered in Venezuela. And the next summer, I studied in Mexico City language classes. So from a fairly early age, I was traveling to some fairly exotic places and just fell in love with it. I never believed that I could make a living out of this. This was many years ago because I'm a little bit older, but 40 years ago, we didn't have the internet and cell phones and all the social media and all these things that we have today that really came together in early 2000s. And I saw that all these things were coming together to create these trips. And now, okay, now I can advertise them and I've got a bigger audience. And so that was a real revelation.
What is the biggest misconception about running travel tours?
The biggest one is that I'm always on vacation. Yeah, people think I'm constantly on vacation because when I do post to social media and stuff, of course, it's the good stuff and it's the fun and beautiful things and interesting. And so it looks all hunky dory, and it usually is. But of course, there are negative parts to travel. As those of us who have traveled know, travel is not all fun and games. But as the tour organizer, the person putting the trip together and one who is on every trip of mine, I take it very seriously, and I want everything to go great and for everyone to have the experience that I promised them. So I'm there to make sure that happens. So that's what I would say about that.
So if someone is listening to this and wants to start their own tourism company, what advice would you give to them if they want to get paid to travel?
Sure. I actually created an online course called Get Paid to Travel: How to Organize and Lead Your Own Special Interest Trips. And that's like the number one tip, is to build your trips around a special interest. And by that, I mean, for me, it was initially photography. For you, it could be language or knitting or shopping or textiles or whatever your interest is. You could build a trip around that and look for people that have that similar interest, and that's your core audience. And so you could build some beautiful trips around just about any special interest you might have, religion, anything. So that was my number one tip, was to build it around a special interest. And for me, it was photography.
As a world traveler, you talk a lot about mindful traveling. What does being a mindful traveler mean?
Yeah, mindful travel to me is about being present. It's about taking in what our surroundings are wherever we are. And it doesn't have to be only while you're traveling, but it can be in your own backyard or in your own home. And so to me, the story goes that the way I even came to this idea initially, like 45 years ago, was I was on that trip to Peru, and we were 16-year-old boys. There was 9 of us, and we had 4 teachers on the trip. And after a week or so down there, we were complaining a little bit about we missed our families and our mother's cooking and our own beds and things like that, typical teenage boys. And one of the priests sat us down and he said, "Guys, you've got this incredible opportunity to literally be on the other side of the world and learn about this place, bring all those teachings back home and use those for the rest of your lives. Be here now. Appreciate where you are right now and this incredible experience that you're having." And that really resonated with me, those 3 words, be here now. It didn't really hit me until about 10 years ago, I'd say. And I think part of it has to do with getting older, more experienced, more mature. But I'm less about wanting to see a little bit of a lot of places and ticking things off a bucket list. And I'm much more about doing a deeper dive into less places. And I think part of that comes with maturity, getting a little bit older, maybe slowing down a little bit. As we get older, we're not quite as energetic as we used to be. But to me, that's what it's all about.
So, having been on the road for 17 plus years, how has your definition of home changed due to this location independence?
That's a great question. Yeah, I am location independent, so it means I'm intentionally homeless. So I don't have a permanent home. And I don't mean to make light of people that are involuntarily homeless. That's a terrible situation. But I don't have a permanent home because about 14, 15 years ago, I realized that I was on the road 7, 8, 9 months out of the year. And I was at the time living in Southern California, one of the most expensive zip codes in the world. And here I am only there 3 months out of the year, for 2 weeks here, 10 days there. And so I finally realized, why am I paying rent 12 months a year in this very expensive place when I'm hardly ever here? So I finally said, you know what, I'm going to minimize everything, get rid of 90% of my stuff, and I'm just going to live on the road. So now I live on my trips. In between trips, I stay in places. I get there early. But when I am back in the States, I will stay with friends or family back here. But I am looking to get a more permanent home in Europe in the next 3 to 5 years, I would say. I'm still up for traveling around a fair amount, but not every 2 or 3 nights changing hotels like I do now. So maybe every 2 or 3 months. So to me, home is where my computer is, But yeah, I mean it has changed a lot. My definition of home. It's wherever you are, that's home.
There are listeners listening to this who are entrepreneurs, who are consultants, who travel a few days out of the week, every week, and they have trouble trying to stay grounded. As someone who has been on the move for 8, 9 months out of the year, every year for 17 plus years, what are some tips that you would give to be able to others so that they can stay grounded?
Yeah, I know a lot of business travelers, they hit the road during the week and maybe come back for weekends or a little bit longer periods of time. But I think bringing something from home with you that reminds you of home or makes you feel settled at home, perhaps it's a pillow or I don't know, a stuffed animal or something that just makes you feel of home when you are on the road. I don't know that I do that, to tell you the truth. I don't have anything like that. I guess after all this time, just my suitcase makes me feel like I'm home. Yeah. But I think that idea of being grounded and appreciative and grateful and being grateful that we are wherever we are. They always say any day that you're above ground is a good day. That appreciation and gratitude.
So many of us watch shows, watch televisions, listen to podcasts like this, and just envy the person who's getting to travel so much, right? Because we all want to travel, we want to see the world, we want to learn things. What has a life of travel taught you the most about yourself?
Yeah, another great question. That I can rely on myself, that I'm okay being in on the other side of the world, literally out. I am very comfortable with that part of it. I'm comfortable with being uncomfortable, to be honest, too. Being in a place where I don't speak the language, I don't know the currency, the customs and traditions. I love learning about those things. So preparing for a trip, and that's part of my job as a tour organizer, is to help people, again, setting those expectations. What should you expect in that place? Can you drink the water? Are people going to be open to you photographing them? Do you need to tip? All these things that people think about or maybe don't think about until they get there. And then it's, hadn't thought about that. And now you get blindsided. So it's about preparation. And having done this so long, it becomes a little bit natural to me and second nature. But my job is to pass that along to my clients who probably aren't traveling quite as much as I am, and to make their trip that much easier.
You spoke about a little bit because there are so many uncertainties and stresses associated with travel. I was reading a CNBC article the other day that said that young people are needing to have classes on how to take a phone call because they're anxious about taking a phone call. So, in a world where young people are just having a fear picking up the phone, how do you teach people to deal with this stress and the anxiety so that they can experience something they've never experienced before?
Yeah, that's a tough one. The people that come on my trips are typically more well-traveled. They're not new travelers. They're not looking for the typical Rome, Venice, Florence, capital city kind of trip, bus tour. They're looking to get off the beaten path. So they're typically more well-traveled, have had some experience. Once in a while, I'll get some newbies, but that's unusual. But it's one of those things where you have to do it and make the mistakes, or again, the preparation, which is what I do, and preparing for these trips and trying to head off any problems before they even rear their heads. It's about anticipation of issues and clearing those up right away so that they don't fester into something bad, especially on a trip with clients.
Yeah.
So that's why I go to these places a year in advance, scout them out, see everything, may see 2 to 3 times the amount of things that I'm going to do on the trip with the group. And then my job is to cobble that together into a great trip that's about half day scheduled, half day free time, and then covers many of the highlights, but then gives that free time for people to go and explore and do their own thing. make their own memories.
But if someone's listening to this and they are a little bit afraid of going to a different country and they have that little stress or anxiety, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I hate to be cliche, but it's just do it. Get that passport. It does take a little while to get it. So, if you've got a trip coming up or something, do it as soon as possible because there's been varying times of getting a passport. But I know a lot of Americans don't even own a passport. So start that process now. They're good for 10 years, but then dip your toes. You don't have to go to India or Antarctica on your first trip. Do that a little bit less, a little easier, maybe a bigger bus tour or something where you're dipping your toes into it. Travel around your own country for a while. Go to different parts of Europe. The U.S. is extremely varied, and you could go to many different parts and feel like sometimes you're in a foreign place. And then maybe go to Canada or Mexico, go to an English-speaking country where you don't have that anxiety of, I don't speak any of this language. What am I possibly going to do? Now we have Google Translate. Many people are speaking English all over the world, but still, how are you going to communicate? That's a big thing. How's the money work? What are the health issues? Can I drink the water, eat the street food? So that preparation, research, and that's what someone like me does for my clients. But if you're traveling on your own, you need to do some of those things on your own.
Obviously, tour organizing companies like yourself help this process a lot because a person just wanting to go to Rome on their own it is more anxiety striking if it's done on their own as opposed to a tour organizing company do it for them. But there are also good companies and not so good companies. So for those who are looking to maybe hire a company like yours, what are some tips you would give them to watch out for so that they don't have one of those disaster stories?
Yeah, today everything is about reviews. So look at the company's reviews. What are past clients saying about them? Ask them about their repeat rate. How many people are coming back on their trips? To toot my own horn a little bit, I've got nothing but 5-star reviews over 17 years. So all 5-star reviews. I think that says a lot. I've got over 50% repeat rate, clients that are coming back on my trips over and over again. I've got clients that have been on 15 trips. I've got one client that's probably been on 30 of my trips. And I don't even have 30 trips. So he's been on to some places 3 or 4 times with me. So that's how much he enjoys my style of travel. And he's even led a trip for me. To me, it's about the reviews. It's what kind of repeat rate they have. What are people saying about the company? Testimonials. I always like to get testimonials from people. I like to get feedback from my clients after a trip and find out what I didn't do right and how I could fix that. But I also love to hear about what I did do right. But so getting feedback. So I'm interested in always improving my trips. And so anyone you choose as your tour operator, hopefully will feel the same way.
The job that you have, the passion that you're pursuing, there is obviously a tactical element of it, and you spoke a lot about that, but there is also a creative element in that. A lot of entrepreneurs who get into a business because they just love it, after a while, lose their passion because of the tenacity and the mundaneness of the day-to-day. So what rituals or routines keep you inspired creatively and personally?
Yeah, especially with something like photography, where I've turned this love of photography into a job. Photography is probably 3 to 5% of what I do. Everything else is the back end part of planning the travel, making sure that my people are in the right place at the right time, staying at the right hotels, having the correct experiences, restaurants and things like that. Having a local experience. I love to get my people to that local business person's place of business, or potentially even into someone's home where we could have a meal or a cup of tea and just learn about them. So to me, that's a great way to do it. I don't know if I'm getting off the topic a little bit, but what was the main question again? I'm sorry.
The main question was, how do you keep yourself creatively inspired?
Yeah.
Year after
So
year?
Yeah, excuse me. So as a photographer, now photography is the main focus of these tours. Although, like I said, I've taken it down a few notches from like photo workshop to photo tour to cultural tour with photography to now we've got our cameras with us all the time, of course. We're going to be taking pictures, but it's not a photo tour. So defining that, having that definition of what we are, who we're after, what our client is, our demographic, that whole thing. But the photography part of it, I'll be honest, has become a bit of a chore. And here I went from this thing that I was very passionate about because it's very different either being a participant on a trip like this or just doing your own travel and taking your own photographs to teaching it, to basing the trip around that idea, to again having to think about sunrises, sunsets, image reviews, photo walks, one-on-ones with people. That's a lot of pressure.
Definitely. Not only that, if they're taking their own photographs and the photographs don't turn out like good later on, then they don't have a favorable memory about the trip. You mentioned about curating these experiences, about taking people to someone's house to have a cup of tea and learn about the culture. Go about scouting these locations and curating these unforgettable experiences.
How do I go about that?
Okay.
Yeah. So I always work with a local tour operator in the destination that can help me put together the trip that I know that I want to put together. So in that Get Paid to Travel course I was telling you about, I have something called the Tour Operator Expectation List. And it's actually a 7-page document that I send to the local tour operator, who again is the person in the destination that has all the contacts for the hotels, guides, activities, transportation, etc., and who I work with to put my trip together. I tell them exactly what I'm looking for. And because I don't want them to show me necessarily museums and monuments and things like that that probably aren't going to be on the trip. So let's not waste time with that. Let's do these things that I do like. I want to meet the local people and artisans and all those kinds of activities. So that's really important to lay that out and let them know what I'm expecting. Then I go on a scouting trip, typically with that person or one of their guides, and I'll see everything. Like I said, maybe 2 or 3 times the amount of things that I could possibly put into a group tour. And then I cobble this trip together that has a really good balance of scheduled activities and free time. I also like to have maybe a capital city and some smaller villages, mix that up. Now I'm even doing more of a deeper dive where we stay in one place for the whole trip and we do a hub and spoke from there. So we'll go to different places in the area. That's something like we stay at this private 11th century castle in France. We stay there 7 nights and then we go to these beautiful villages nearby and we pack and unpack once. And then if people want to add on Paris or do something before or after the trip, they can certainly do that, and they often do. But our part of the trip might be 7, 8, 9 days only.
If someone wanted to learn this, the craft, the business, perhaps because they want their own travel company, what would you recommend they do?
It's a bit self-serving, but my course that I created is $499, and it's the best money you'll ever spend if you are looking to do what I do. I am often asked, how can I do what you do? Because people think I live an ideal life, it's really great. I decided to create this online course, but it walks you step by step exactly what to do from the beginning to the end to do what I do. That would be one thing. The other thing is to see what other companies are doing, get ideas from other tour operators that you respect, see how you can create your own little niche, how you can be different. A lot of these trips are going to be based around you. Like my trips are based around me because I'm on every trip. I'm the one who's speaking to the audiences, telling them about my trips. So people tend to come on my trips because of me. And so it's been hard to expand and like maybe get other tour leaders to lead trips for me because I made the company too much about me. Initially, it was called Ralph Velasco Photo Tours. I changed that and made it more generic to Photo Enrichment Programs. And now it's Continental Drifter Experiences. So that would be my advice.
Yeah. Let's ask some fun questions about your travel. After, what's a destination that surprised you the most?
The Republic of Georgia really blew me away. It's an amazing country over by Russia, Turkey, Armenia. Beautiful place, gorgeous. In the north near Russia, it's very much like Switzerland. Beautiful snow-capped mountains, skiing, gorgeous. But they have the oldest wine culture in the world, they say. Great food. It's very inexpensive. There's a lot of modern and historic sites. So just a wonderful, very small country that I really was blown away by. The other is Antarctica, which may be obvious, but I love wildlife. I love animals, but I had no idea how affected I'd be by that trip. And the feeling of remoteness being down on the bottom of the world. But what we do is we fly down. So we fly from Punta Arenas, Chile, which is way at the bottom tip of South America, less than 2 hours, and we're in Antarctica and getting on the smallest ship in the industry down there, 67 passengers, and then 5 nights down in Antarctica, and then fly back. The only way I was going to run an Antarctica trip was to be able to fly down, because I didn't want to sail the Drake Passage, which is like 2.5 days each way of misery, potential misery. Yeah, potential. Yeah. So Antarctica blew me away. Just the remoteness, the quiet, the fact that you don't see an airplane contrail or a cell tower or anything man-made. It's really great.
What's the most unexpected connection you've made on your travels?
I was thinking about it just yesterday. I become such good friends with my tour operators in the destination. That person that has all the local knowledge, my local guides, become very good friends with them because oftentimes they're the ones that take me on that scouting trip. And we might spend 1 or 2 weeks together, just one-on-one. And you become very good friends with people or not when you're in that close quarters, but it's always been a great experience. So the local tour operators, they also are able to give you all the local knowledge, and it's just fun. I've become such good friends with my tour operators in these places and guides.
What photo are you most proud of, and what's the story behind it? Because there has to be one.
Yeah, I've got a couple. There's this one photograph I can think of that is I took in Vietnam near the Mekong Delta. And I was driving by on a scouting trip with my local tour operator, and we had a driver. And we're driving by this highway, and I see these ladies in a field planting rice. And they've got the conical hats on, and I believe they're called nonla hats, the very traditional conical hat that you see on the Vietnamese people, typically the women there. And I said, hey, can we stop? Can we pull over? Because I wanted to see these ladies. And we were on a highway. So we pulled over, had to run across the highway, which wasn't too busy, to go see these ladies. So we're standing up on the top of this ridge and looking down at the ladies planting the rice. And my local guide is translating. They're talking. He's talking to her. She asks him a question. Says, she's asking what your name is. So my name's Ralph. What's hers? And he would tell me, translate that. She's asking where you're from. So I'm from Chicago, U.S. Very happy to be in your country. So he explains that. Says, what do you do for a living? I'm a tour organizer, and I'm here in your beautiful country taking pictures and blah, blah, blah. He translates that. He says, are you single? So this lady was really funny, and we had a blast. And I just have this wonderful memory of speaking, quote, in quotation marks, speaking to this woman through my translator and just having a laugh and getting some really nice shots.
Yeah, I mean, incredible story. You talked about traveling different countries, taking photographs, and running into such interesting people. Due to the advent of the camera phone, we're at an all-time high of just not being in a moment and just looking at everything through the lens. It's no longer a trait that's only exclusive to tour guides and tour organizers. It's
Yeah.
everybody now. Everybody's. What would you say is a good way to balance being present in the moment while also capturing it?
Yeah, and that's the big dichotomy for a photographer, especially because we are the worst. Our intention is to spend the whole trip with our eye to the viewfinder of a camera, right? Because we want to get those shots. And I can understand that, but my thing is that I'm all about balance. And I think that we need to spend, as I say, travel photography is two words. Spend as much time traveling as you are photographing. And that's a big reason that I created this Mindful and Intentional Traveler series of books, was because as a photographer, I'm the worst. So I would find myself going to these amazing places, and I'd come back with beautiful photographs, and I'd got the passport stamps and the receipts and everything. So I know I was there, but was I there mentally? I know I was there physically, but mentally, was I there? I think, again, as we get older and a little bit more mature, we start to appreciate that idea of being present and just being in a place. And my tip for that, now, my first book that I wrote about 13, 14 years ago was 101 Tips for Developing Your Photographic Eye and More. The last tip in the book is to put the camera down. And I think that should probably be the first tip. But we have to put the camera down and just be in a place. There's nothing that I like more than sitting in an outdoor cafe and watching the world go by, or sitting on a bar stool at a pub somewhere in Europe. The bar stool's older than the United States of America, and I'm talking to some old timer over a Guinness or something. That to me is travel. That's travel. It's not just ticking off bucket lists and seeing important places. It's the people. Super important. So my recommendation is that you should set a timer for yourself every 1 or 2 hours, let's say, and stop, look, listen, feel, touch, maybe even taste, smell your surroundings intentionally. Intention means to do it consciously, to really think about doing that, not just in passing. Because these smartphones are fantastic. They're a great tool. But like you said, they're made to take us away from where we are. So put that thing down, turn it off, leave it back at your hotel room, put it deep in your bag, and just absorb the place. Take it out. Of course, we want to get our pictures. Take it out every now and then, but don't live with that thing in front of your face.
You also created something called the 60 affirmations for travel. What is that, and how does that influence the mindset of a traveler?
Yeah, the affirmations were, again, about that gratitudes and affirming. So these are 60 gratitudes that have to do with travel. And I put them into the book. There's also adult coloring pages. There's lined pages so that people can write notes to themselves, their thoughts, connections they've made, things like that. I've also created a book called Travel Activity Book for Adults that has 60 gratitudes for travel. But it also has mandalas, which are adult coloring pages, inspirational travel quotes, things like that, crossword puzzles, word searches having to do with travel. And I imagine people sitting on an airplane. I got the book right here, that sitting on an airplane and, wanting to be offline, because you probably have to be on an airplane, and just sitting down with this book and coloring or doing word searches, thinking about travel. And that's the idea behind that book. And then the other book in the series is How to Be a Mindful Traveler, and the subtitle, Deepening Your Travel Experiences Through the 5+ Senses. So that's where that idea of stop, look, feel, taste, touch. As a single guy, I sit in front of the TV, I'm on my phone, I'm listening to a podcast, and I'm eating, and I'm not doing any of them well. So it's put the phone down, turn off the TV, taste that food, really enjoy it. That's especially when we're traveling, usually such a big part of the experience is the food. So why would we want to do that unconsciously? Like just in the background, we're eating because we have to. Enjoy that food, taste it, savor it, think about where it came from, who made it. So that to me is what travel's about.
Of all the books that you've written and everything else you've written, like The Mindful Intentional Traveler, what was the most fun to write and which one was the hardest to write?
Yeah, I have a book called 52 Categories of a Shot List, and that is based on an app, an iPhone app that I created about 12 or 13 years ago that now has been updated out of the App Store, so it's no longer available. But I decided to turn that information into a book so that people could still get the information. Yeah, I don't have that one right here. But that is 52 categories of a shot list. So a shot list is just a list of the types of shots that you should be thinking about when you're going to a place. And it could be interiors, night scenes, people, landscapes, architecture, etc. These are different categories, types of photography. A lot of photographers specialize. They're an architecture photographer, portrait, landscape. But a travel photographer kind of has to be a jack of all genres, master of some, because we want to come back with a variety of images that tells the story of the place, not just people pictures, just plates of food. So that book was really fulfilling to be able to take that app, put the information into a book format. The hardest one to write, I'm actually in the process of writing a bucket list book, bucket lists for travel. And that one has been very difficult, but it's got about 90 different bucket lists for people to think about. And it goes in line with the mindful and intentional travel because it's not about ticking off as many as possible, but it's about being inspired by places that you haven't yet been to. But it's lists like UNESCO World Heritage Sites, museums, different types of foods around the world, drinks, bars, famous restaurants, but also continents, states, countries, and you're able to tick those off your list physically right in the book. So that one's taken me a little bit longer to write, but I plan on having that done in the next couple of weeks and out there in the next month or so. So I'm excited about that one.
If you could tell yourself something back in 2008 when you started all of this, what would you tell yourself?
Ooh, yeah. So the physical part of travel is what, can really get to you. And it's the planes, trains, automobiles. As much as I do travel, I've had some issues with my lower back from that kind of thing. So it's about stretching and yoga and being more physically active in that sense. So I would tell myself to prepare for that.
Love it. Ralph, thank you for being on the show. I know for everybody listening to this, they wish and hope and desire to be able to travel more. We are more and more, prisoned in our own homes, especially through work from home. And for somebody like you to be out there, providing them an opportunity where they don't have to do any of the planning, they just opt in and you take care of the rest. I think it's an experience that is worth its weight in gold. So thank you so much for being on the show. Any last words for our audience members?
I really appreciate your having me on. It was a great conversation, great questions, but life's too short not to travel. That's my tagline. And I really believe that someday never comes. Someday when I'm retired, when I've got enough money, when I've got time, when I got this, when I got that. But life happens, and next thing you know, you're 60, 70, 80 years old and perhaps not as physically able to travel. So do it now. Get out there and just do it.
Yeah. Someday never comes. Such a true statement. Thank you so much for being on the show, Ralph. I'll speak to you soon again.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.